afternoon. I'm Thasunda Brown Duckett, and as he said, I'm the CEO of TIAA, and it is so great to be here because prior to being the CEO of TIAA, I was at JP Morgan Chase as the CEO of the Consumer Bank, and then prior to that, I had the privilege to be the CEO of Auto. And so it's so fantastic to see so many of you that I've known for many years, including my old Auto teammates who are here. But I'm really excited about today's conversation. And there's a couple of gems I hope I can drop that you all will take with you. It's leadership qualities that I keep within myself. One is, yes, I'm a CEO, but my title is rented. I like to tell people, my title is rented, I own my character. And I encourage everyone to always show up with your ownable assets. Because if I am a CEO or not, I am still smart, intellectually curious. I have grit, tenacity, and perseverance. And so I hope you all realize that what you own resides within yourself. Secondly, I would say, my father always told me, people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And so hopefully throughout this conversation, you'll get a little insight about not just my leadership qualities, but the reason why I have two stools here. Do you guys know why? No, I'm just that good. No. In any event, I have two stools because the conversation would not be complete without having a conversation with someone who I admire, someone who I call my friend and my brother. He represents what extraordinary is all about. He is a prodigy. He is someone that has broken so many records, have broken so many arts of impossibilities and have made them possible. So why don't we roll the video and see who I'm having a conversation with.
Ready or not, here I come, you can't hide. Gonna find you and take it slowly. Ready or not, here I come, you can't hide. Gonna find you and make you want me. Yo, I play my enemies like a game of chess where I rest. No stress if you don't smoke cess. Less, I must confess, my destinies manifest. In some vortex and sweats, I make tracks like I'm homeless. Rap orgies with Borgie and Best. Capture your bounty like Elliot Ness. Yes, bless you if you represent.
You guys welcome Wyclef Jean to the conversation.
If you do, I could do what you do. Easy, believe me. Frontin' niggas give me heebie-jeebies.
I'm great.
Let's go. Come on.
Not yet. We're going to have this conversation first.
How are you?
I am fantastic. So this conversation is all about leadership journeys. And like my father always says, people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And in order to understand the leader that you are today, you may have to go back to give context. I know for me, growing up with a mother who's a retired educator now, and a father who's a stock handler, and because I'm in financial services, people think like stockbroker. I mean, like, no, stock handler, like working in a warehouse processing boxes for over 40 years. And so I understand what it's like to have financial insecurity. And I believe that that story growing up, wondering how my parents could make a meal when all I saw was baking soda, has now led me to have a passion in fulfilling my purpose to ensure that financial inclusion is there for everyone. And so I'm able to connect those dots on my full circle to being a CEO of TIAA. Wyclef, I would love to understand your full circle, so maybe take people back to help them understand who you really are.
I definitely think we connect. So I was born in Haiti, and I always say by the time I got to Brooklyn and I was in the projects, I felt like I was rich. Jefferson, we done moving on up to the east side. 'Cause I told people, man, I said, y'all complaining about them sneakers? I said, I used to have to go to the bathroom in a ravine. And they're like, what is that? I said, it's not a bathroom. I mean, when it's time to go for water, you literally jumping on a donkey and you're going for like 5 or 6 miles to find a clean well. So for me, it all started with imagination. The power of imagination is real. Now, I'm from, ain't nobody gonna know this place when I tell them. It's almost like Wonder Woman Island. When you're watching that, it's not on the map. It's a place called Le Serre. Le Serre is within the city of Quadebuque. Yeah. And this deep place, I want you to imagine this small little village with maybe 75 people. For you to enter the village, there's a cemetery. And this is how you enter the village. So we had the cemetery, and the cemetery, the best way I could describe you, this was our Walt Disney. So the cemetery is where we played. And we used to play a game in the village called I'm Going to America, What You Want Me to Bring Back? True story. So literally, here go how the game go. So the donkey would come, and I get on the donkey. And this is Creole, of course. And then all of the kids are like, oh, para los Estados Unidos, pote somewhere. You know, big translation, you know, you going to America, you know, some would ask for food, some ask for jewelry, some ask for books. And all I remember is getting on the donkey after taking the orders, and now I'm going around the cemetery. And as I would be coming around the other side of the cemetery, the joy in the eyes, we forgot that we ain't eat for 4 days.
Wow.
And so for me, I always believe that the power of imagination, the idea of when they say talk it into existence.
Yes,
so I believe in that.
I love that so much. I know, right? And just before I bounce back to me, I just want to make sure that people understand the magnitude of who you are. You are a prodigy. How many instruments do you play, Wyclef?
I play over 14 instruments.
14?
So, yeah, I play over 14. The way that I got into instruments, so I would always say, so my first song I wrote was in the village in Haiti. And I had wrote it for my stray dogs. And it's factual. It's literally, and the song was like, Kolebowo, Kolebowo, Kolebowo. I know it sucks now. But back then, it was a big song. By the time I got to 10 years old, I got to America.
Right.
And my father was a minister. So I grew up in the projects, and the way that I got into instruments, this is so true. So my daddy had one TV with an antenna. You feel me? Some Al Bundy vibe. So he would be controlling the couch. You feel me? And so literally whatever he wants on the TV is on the TV.
Right.
And we had censorship. And within the censorship, we was allowed to watch Sesame Street. And Sesame Street, you had the Muppets.
Yes.
And so my introduction to English and my introduction to sounds was really the Muppets. So you had Mr. Kermit who used to talk like this. This is how Kermit would talk. You know, then you had Mrs. Piggy.
Yes.
And I remember one day in the projects, my father came in and with all of the instruments from the Muppets. And every Sunday in the church, we would just start off by banging these instruments. So by the time I was 16 years old, somehow I was playing over like 7 or 8 instruments. And a music teacher discovered me in high school and said, where did you learn all of this stuff I was doing with my hands on the piano? And I was like, I could just hear it. And she said, close your eyes, what do you see? And I was like, I see 3 in one hand and 5 in one hand. And she was like, tomorrow you're starting jazz. I was like, no, I ain't. Jazz is for old people. And she was like, you're starting jazz tomorrow. And when she put me in jazz at 16 years old, I have to tell you, I didn't have an idea of what a rapper was, a rocker was, a country singer was. I didn't know what that was. All I knew was I wanted to be a composer like Gershwin or Quincy Jones. So that's always been the focus of the nuance of how it started for me.
What I love, how many of you all can relate to someone who cared enough or said enough that changed your life, your trajectory? Anybody? Yeah, for me, I remember two people, Mr. and Ms. Patterson, and they told me about a program called Inroads. And Inroads is a program for talented minorities to get exposure into corporate America. And without the power of information, I would not be here as a CEO. But what's interesting about the power of disruption is I remember when I was interviewed, and we were at the campus of SMU in Dallas, Texas, and you were interviewed by several companies. Fannie Mae had one internship available. And a woman by the name of Valerie Manning went back to Fannie Mae and said, I found our intern. Who do you think it was? No, her name was Sarah. But Valerie Manning, who did not have a powerful rented title. Valerie Manning would not get cool points to go back to Fannie Mae to say there's a second intern. But for whatever reason, Valerie Manning was advocating for me before I even understood the power of advocacy. And she said, I found our one intern. Her name is Sarah. But there's this other girl. I share this because without the power of information and without someone named Valerie Manning to feel compelled to go back and not just hit the minimum of what she was asked to do, but to say, but there's this other girl. And by Valerie Manning saying that there's this other girl, I started my career at Fannie Mae, which then led me to JP Chase to be a CEO not once but twice, first African-American CEO at the company, made it to the operating committee, first African-American at the operating committee at JP Chase, and now the CEO of TIAA, the first woman CEO of TIAA, and only the third African-American woman to ever run a Fortune 500 company full-time, 2 being named this year. I just share that because I share that not to brag or anything, but I share that because it was everyday people that disrupted my trajectory and provided me something that I did not know was even possible. I couldn't dream this life, if you know what I mean. And that's what that teacher recognized in you. Yes. So I want to pivot. You speak how many languages?
Well, I dabble with a lot of languages. You dabble with a lot of languages. Because when I was young, I have an uncle. His name is Raymond Joseph. Okay. And if anyone wants to Google it, he's the original Haitian James Bond. Oh. So he has a book called For Whom the Dogs Spy. He was responsible for taking out Baby Doc, the dictator. So growing up, he used to tell me about languages. Wow. So literally the way I learned a lot of languages was my jobs. So one of my jobs, I was in the hood, South Orange Avenue, and across the street, I remember it, I was in front of this store doing bad things. Yes. And once again, to your point, and like he's doing bad things. To your point though, it'd be that one person, right? Yes. So a Korean brother came out and he was like, what are you doing in front of the store? I don't want you doing that no more. I'm gonna bring you in here, I'm gonna give you a job. So he brought me into the beauty supply store. So my daddy have his church, and don't think I ain't thug, because I used to work in a beauty supply store. So now across the street, I'm working in a beauty supply store. You don't even know about this. Revlon, Precise, Gentle Treatment, synthetic hair.
You're going way back.
Human hair. I'm just showing you.
Wow.
And I said, yo, start to teach me some words. And because I used to love to sing in different languages. So then he started teaching me words in Korean. And I literally was trying to phonetically write. I said, how you say I love you? Seranghamnita. How you say Anyang Hashamika? You know, Anyang Haseoy. And anybody who's Korean knows I'm telling the true stuff, and it's not from Google Translate. Right. Spanish is a cheating language for me because coming from Haiti, it's really Española next to the Dominican Republic. So here goes the demonstration. You ready? And it's gonna bug everyone's out because I'm gonna do languages they don't think I can do. You ready?
I'm ready. Are y'all ready?
Okay. Americans say how you doing. German people say wie geht's. When I go to Germany, they say wie steht's. If you love hip hop, let's have some Spaß. Tell me, baby girl, wie wären das? I bet you ain't nobody here thought I could flip some German like that. No, I promise you.
I did not.
You know what I'm saying?
Great.
And that's just the love of going to countries and just studying. Yeah. I just love it.
Well, I love it. And when you think about leadership journeys, what you just represented is the power of connection. And I think in order to be a great leader, you have to connect. You have to connect with everyone at all levels, from the janitor to the operating committee to the board. And I remember when I was the CEO of Auto, within the first 30 or 60 days, I went to the mailroom because I wanted to make sure that the person furthest away from me could connect to the vision that we had, anchored in the client experience. So when I went to the mailroom, they never had a CEO going to the mailroom. So they put up the pants, took the headsets off. But I told them how they connected to the client experience. I said, because when someone makes a payment, you start the process. And if you don't do your job with excellence, it could go to the wrong chute. And instead of posting on the auto payment, it could post on the mortgage or something else, which means it gets lost, it's late, they now get a fee, they get upset, they close their account, and we've just lost a client. But because you've done your job with excellence, when you hear us talking at earnings or when you hear us talking about improving client satisfaction, I was like, brush your shoulders off because you have a role in that. And those gentlemen in the mailroom looked at me and said, you're welcome. You know we got you. That's the power of connecting and understanding everyone plays a part. And so when you think about leadership journeys, you are a composer. You are a Grammy Award winner once, twice, three. You've worked with some of the most iconic people like Shakira and Carlos Santana and Michael Jackson, and the list goes on and on. Talk about the power of connection. And what does that mean for you when you think about leadership?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. Like, I was the kid that my father would take to work with him at night. And so when the Ramada Inn was closing, this is when we showed up. And we would show up like when the cover band is playing their last 5 songs, you know, born in the USA, you know what I'm saying? And we show up and we have to clean all of the dishes, right? Then we have to go out, clean all of the tables. This philosophy is very important. So this is how I apply to everyday life. When I'm in the studio with Michael Jackson, I'm just a fan. When I'm in the studio with Whitney, I'm forever a fan. And what does that mean? I'm constantly learning. So I think that it all boils to I'm an everyday student.
Yes.
So, right? So now my daughter is 16. So I'm an everyday student now. So I'm a student with my daughter. She's the one that's like, Dad, I mean, your music is cool, but you might want to do another song with Young Thug, you know? But just listening to the culture experience,
yes.
It's also very important. And I think the idea of understanding.
Yes.
And what do we mean by understanding? You could never underestimate people by appearance. So for example, if I tell everyone in this room, my actual trade is engineering,
Right.
sound engineering. And we was to start to talk about how I hear sound, you know, 440 hertz. And when I did this Ready or Not album, it wasn't done in no recording studios. It was done in my uncle's basement. So literally an album that topped the charts in every way possible was done in the basement. When Shakira hits me and goes, yo, you know, Wild Thoughts has 1 billion views, right? And I'm thinking that this record was done 2 years prior to Shakira. And people was like, I don't think this is going to work, right? But I think that it's so important that we pay attention to culture shift.
Yes.
And culture shift is when you are forever a student and you're just constantly learning. Like I'm looking at people right now, I'm feeling the vibe. I'm learning something from him. Not necessarily him, but just kidding. But I'm learning, you know what I mean?
Well, I love it so much because you said something that I think many of us can relate to. I know that I can, which is sometimes people size you up incorrectly. And I say that even in corporate America because if there's only been 3 Black women to ever run a Fortune 500 every year, only 3 full time, then that means if I'm rocking my hair like this or if I'm rocking braids, people would not assume that I am a CEO of a Fortune 100. I experienced that when I was the CEO of Auto, where many times I would be in meetings and they would look at my partner who reported to me, and I would just have to say, wait for it, wait for it. He says, she's the boss. And I say that because I do think that as we think about culture in the shift, even with disruption, you can no longer put things in a box. Disruption is coming from everywhere. financial services, you don't look at your competitors anymore as your core competitors. Your core competitors are companies that you would think have no tie, but actually that's where the disruption is coming from. And so when we think about the future and we think about leadership and leadership journeys, I think it's really time for all of us to no longer assume what's in the container. Because if you limit how you view what a CEO could look like, or the brains of someone who someone would say they have no idea how brilliant you are, because after all, maybe they only view you as a hip hop artist and not a composer, you'll miss your shot. And I think especially for the future of business, if we're anchored in putting everything in a box, business will get disrupted and it will shift away from you because that intellectual curiosity, that mindset of expansion, we're not practicing. And so I do think Leadership Journeys is about always being a student, intellectual curiosity, but not putting people in containers because business is no longer in one container. I want to close by asking one quick question because I see we're running out of time. I'm anchored in purpose. And so I never dreamed of being a CEO, but my father always told me to reach for the moon because even if I missed, I would be among the stars. And so my purpose in life is to inspire and make impact. And I believe that I have this amazing platform to deliver for the participants that we serve at TIAA, to deliver for the community, to deliver for my colleagues, and ultimately to make a positive impact in the world. Wyclef Jean, what is your purpose?
I mean, I think my sole purpose is a connector of humanity. And so throughout my entire career, and as I continue, because I just turned 21, throughout my entire career.
Are we playing Two Lies and a Truth right now?
Exactly. So my entire career, whether if it was music, it's the connectivity of people.
That's right.
And I think that it's always that thing to remind us. No matter how you might see we look different,
yes,
but we have so much more in common as
That's
human
right.
beings that y'all might think.
We
so
absolutely
I
do.
will continue connecting.
You know what? 1 minute, I'm going to prove your point. Can everyone stand up? So I'm going to prove how connected we are. We've never met, many of us. You've never met many of them,
Yeah.
but I bet we have things in common. So when I say something in common, you're going to sit down and we're going to see how long it takes to show that this connection of humanity is real. So first, if you all are married or have someone in your direct family that have served our country, sit down. I'm married to a Marine. If you are, I was born in New York. If you were born in New York, sit down. I lived in New Jersey, then I moved to Texas. If you've lived in Texas, sit down. I'm a Knicks fan. It's a struggle. Sit down. I absolutely love This Is Us. It's a show on TV. I love This Is Us. I love basketball. If you love basketball, sit down. I absolutely, absolutely love Wyclef Jean. Now, some of y'all are like, I'm going to be polite. But the reality is, if you love humanity, if you love the art of possibility, if you think about leadership journeys, Wyclef Jean, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
And you're amazing, 100%. This is the one right here.
Thank you, guys.